Hello, and welcome to my dining room. This is episode 25 of the Live and Learn Knitting Podcast. Today is August 25th, Sunday, 2024, and my name is Anne, or Annie, and I'm coming to you from the banks of the Mississippi River in western Wisconsin. Thank you for joining me today. I am so happy to be here chatting with you on a warmish Sunday afternoon. It's going to get hot today and tomorrow. The pool closed for the season on Friday, and it seems like it never fails that as soon as the pool closes and as soon as school starts, we get a heat wave. So mid-90s tomorrow. Today is going to be a quiet day. Just after this, I'm going to go water the plants outside, and that's probably my outside activity for the day. At any rate, welcome, and thank you for joining me. And let's just dive in. I've got a couple things to talk about this episode. If you remember, last time was Small Things Part 1. Well, this will be Small Things Part 2. I don't know if you can hear the red squirrel. We might have red squirrel chatter during this episode. The squirrels are really active. I think it's going to be a good year for walnuts, and so they are out gathering all kinds of nuts and running around like mad. So that's good. So Small Things Part 2. And I have two small projects to share with you today that I made. And then I've got an idea for another one and some other things to talk about. We'll diverge at the end a bit. So the first thing that I want to share with you that I finished this week, I finished two of these, are these, there's a hair on that one. Okay, I finished these two apple caps, and they are Free Pattern on Ravelry by Area Zuzia Benjamin. And I believe at one time he was in Colorado. I'm not sure if he still is, but he designed these, again, way back in the 90s when we had the knit list, the email list for knitting people. And we did that Christmas sharing our patterns and such, and this is what he designed. So basic, just a roll brim, stockinette all the way, and that is as far as that's going to roll up. And then you do a bit of shaping at the top, and this shaping is, I guess, what you'd call severe, because there's not a plain round in between. It's just when you start doing the decreases, you do them every round. And end with a little stem, a little I-cord stem at the top, and make a couple garter stitch leaves, and sew all that on, sew the leaves on, and that's it. And I've made many of these. We have, this area, we have apple orchards, and in the fall there are more than one apple festival, apple celebration in the area. So I make apple caps, and if I remember right, this one is actually, I probably made it, I did make it actually a few rounds taller. This is a newborn size. His pattern, and I will link to the pattern in the show notes, and you can find it on Ravelry. His pattern is 3 sizes, 6 months, a year, and 2 years. And I was asked to make a newborn size. And the pattern is in a stitch count of a multiple of 8 stitches. So it was easy just to decrease, subtract 8 stitches and cast down a smaller size. And so then this is the 6-month size, the smallest size that he lists. I believe he calls for worsted weight yarn in his pattern, and I just basically use any red that I have. I've made them in fingering weight, in sport weight. This is Knit Picks Brava Sport. And oh my gosh, is it ever a soft yarn for an acrylic? It's just lovely to work with. It felt really plump, very plump, and has a nice feel to it. So the knitting, to me, it almost felt like a worsted weight. It's not, but it felt. I've not tried the Brava. I think they have a worsted and a sport, so I've not tried the worsted. But anyway, it made a nice dense cap. So I've used worsted, sport, fingering, And I just adjust my needle size and, you know, pick a different stitch count, and they work out. You know, they're flexible. I also found when I had a request for newborn, I found a really good chart online that showed, it said, it didn't just say head circumferences. Here's what a baby's head should be, in, you know, at newborn and 6 months, 9 months, etc. It talked about cap size, and that's maybe why I made this one a little deeper, because it said for a newborn to make it 7 inches across, you know, or 14 inches circumference, and then 6 inches deep before the shaping. And so I kind of stuck with that for this one. I think I guess I made this one a little shallower. No big deal, you know, this'll fit, baby. So yeah, I made 2 so far, and I'm gonna make a few more. I'll see how many I get done before the festival comes. This is nice. They kind of nest, and as you make bigger ones, they nest inside each other. So, and you know, good to use up little scraps on the leaves and the stems. Yeah, so I have different yarns for both stems and for both sets of leaves. And there is a leaf online that is more of that lace leaf shape. You know, you see that lace, and it does look like a leaf with a center vein to it, center spine to it. You could also make that leaf if you want, but these are just so quick and easy. These little garter stitch leaves, and they're fun. So that's the apple cap, all ready for fall. And again, looking ahead towards our create along, make along wintertide event, this would be a good restful pattern, because easy garters, easy stockinette and quick gratification. Took no time at all to make 2. So that's the apple cap. And I think that's all I wanted to say about the apple cap. So the second pattern I have to share with you today is, it's a crochet pattern, and it is for this little item, which is a soap sack. And it's got a little drawstring top. It's crocheted out of, you can use knit crocheting, you know, a number 10 crochet cord. This happens to be Katya Jaipur cotton, which is no longer made, it's too bad, because this was the mercerization. This cotton just felt a little extra fancy compared to some of the crochet cord cottons, even though they say they're mercerized. This one had just an extra bit of roundness to it and sheen. So yeah, Katya Jaipur, or Jaipur, I'm not sure how you pronounce that city. But this is a pattern that I designed, and why I designed it and why I have this in the first place is because when I was a kid, my mom, who I've talked about many times on this podcast, she made these. It was a pattern from an old work basket for a mesh soap sack, and it was shaped like a fish. So at this end, you started with a round beginning like that, but you also added, or maybe you started with white and then you moved on to your color, so that there was a little white mouth at the end of the fish. And then after you were done, you crocheted a little white eyeball onto one of the mesh on each side. You crocheted a fin up at the top, and then at the end, instead of having like a fancy little ruffle like I made, you had like the tails of an angelfish, so they went out in angles. And oh my gosh, we always had those around. She made them for gifts. She liked to crochet, so she made a lot of those and would give those with a bar of soap as a gift. And yep, we had that soap sack, and it wasn't just for new bars of soap, of course, it's for holding your scraps of soap as well. And, you know, I can always remember opening it up and putting the scraps of soap in there and just scrubbing with it and how good it felt. So I always had one. And when the last fish wore out, I thought, okay, now I've got to, she wasn't around anymore, you know, so I've got to make my own, I've got to make one. I didn't want to make a fish. Wildlife. I didn't want to make fish. You know, that's a little too fanciful for me. So I just wanted a plain crochet, you know, something. So I figured out a shaping for the bottom and how long and all that, and a nice beading round to put the string ties in at the end. And then I'm really proud of this little scallop at the top because it just fit in, you know, around, and it's not complicated. Sometimes those scallops that you see on crochet projects can get really elaborate. So this is just a little basic one, but yet it gives you a nice little scalloped edge. So this is my version of a soap sack. And I'll show you, I have another one here that's in Christmas colors. And this bar of soap that I put in here, I believe is it's a 4-ounce bar of soap. And so you can see that a new bar, you know, fits in there pretty well. It does kind of, you know, it's got that, shape of the soap. And this bar, 5.3 ounces, it also fits in. It's a little more snug, but you know, this is a mesh, so it expands in that. So that fits in there as well. And that would, and of course, to use it, you would remove the wrappers, obviously. But, you know, if you were giving this as a gift, you might want to keep the wrapper on. And I don't know if you follow this tip, if you use bar soap at all. My mom always used to unwrap a bar and keep it in her hanky drawer. I keep one, I unwrap a bar and I keep it in my underwear drawer, and I have my underwear all lined up in the drawer. And so I kind of put that soap in the middle, and as it works towards the end, then when it, you know, because I pretty much take, unless I'm really trying to be matchy-matchy with colors, I just take the pair on the right and, you know, work across the row. So when it gets to the end, I just move it back to the middle and it goes. And then when I need a bar of soap, you know, to take out a new bar, I take that one out of the drawer and then I unwrap another one and put it in the drawer. In a book I've talked about before, because we're going to get frugal today. This is the frugal hour of the show. The Complete Tightwad Gazette by Amy Decision. She has a little article in here, an essay about whether unwrapped soap lasts longer than wrapped soap. But the soap lasts longer if it dries out more. And they came to the conclusion that it did, but she kind of, I think by the end of this, it's pretty, like she's poking fun at herself and all of these little experiments that she did to prove, you know, that you were saving 5 cents more or 10 cents more or $1 more, you know, that you were. So this one was such a minuscule savings amount. What did it end up being? This is what, 1990s era, that if you unwrapped your bar of soap in 1990s money terms, you saved $1.15 annually. Wow. But it just proves her point of, you know, if you're curious about those kinds of things, try and experiment and figure it out, you know. You do your own. And she had said that in many articles, these different cost-effective tests that she did. You know, it's do what works for you. And maybe I wouldn't take the time to figure that out, but I think just in our heads, we kind of believe that it lasts longer. And oh, I believe in that article at the beginning, she mentioned that original idea came from an old Heloise article. And I'm sure some of you are old enough to remember Hints with Heloise. And my mom used to cut those articles out of the Sunday paper. They were in the comics section, I believe. And maybe. Anyway, because I thought they were color. It had some color around them. But she would cut those out and she saved them in a scrapbook, and I remember reading them through when I was little and learning to read. I don't know what happened to that scrapbook. I don't think I have it. I haven't seen it in years, so it's maybe long gone. But Hints with Heloise. I'm just looking on the shelves over there if I saved one of her. She published books as well, and I know my mom had some. I don't know if I kept any. Anyway, there's nothing new under the sun as far as thrift and saving money goes, right? So, yeah, so that's the purpose of the soap sack. And I will show you, this is the one I'm currently using in the bathroom. And you can see it's kind of long, and like compared to this, it's elongated, it's stretched out, but it's holding all of my, can you see them in there? All my scraps of soap, they're in there. And yeah, the thing I like about using the crochet cord to make this project, because there are many patterns online. We make those dishcloths and washcloths out of like sugar and cream, Lily sugar and cream, and peaches and cream, and the heavier weight crochet yarn, not crochet yarn, cotton yarn. And they're okay, but I think when you put soap in them, you can't leave the soap in them because they don't dry out fast enough, and the soap is just mush inside there. So I think you'd always have to take the soap out every time, and and then maybe people would be feel like they need to wash those out and put them in the laundry, and that kind of defeats the purpose of this just dries out, and you use it time and time and time again, and and lather it up and scrub away, and then hang it up to dry, and it dries very fast, and your soap lasts and lasts. And at some point the scraps do get really tiny and maybe fall through the mesh, but most of the time they just dissolve, they just disappear. So this is my Frugal soap sack idea. And my mom was saving soap a long time before she started making her crocheted fish pattern. This is something that she had with her when she came to Wisconsin in the 50s. And this was probably her mom's. This is a soap holder, and you would open it up like this, put your bar of soap in there, your piece of soap in there, and you would swish this around. Oh, I want to get that back on. There. You would swish this around in your dishwater, and dissolve the bar soap into your dishwater and do your dishes. That was before liquid dish soap. You remember, before liquid dish soap, and this was even before my time, believe it or not. There was soap powder, and soap powder was hard to dissolve. You'd had to do some extra steps to get it to dissolve. So this was one way to get soap into your water and get your water nice and soapy. And the purpose of soap, well, I'll talk about the purpose of soap in a minute, but back to the pattern. I did put this pattern in my Etsy shop, and I listed it on a pattern page for it on Ravelry, but I put it in my Etsy shop, and I did put a price on it of $2.50 for the pattern. And the only reason I did that, I debated back and forth, should I put it as free pattern or should I put it as a pay for pattern? And what tipped my thinking, there are, if you go to my Ravelry page, it says I have patterns on there, and what they are, is 2 washcloths and knit washcloths. And that was from back in the 90s again. I was part of a blog, and maybe some of you were too, because I think it was a fairly big group of people. And it was a washcloth, dishcloth exchange. And so you signed up with the moderator, and you would make a washcloth, cotton washcloth, and you'd send it off to someone, and then they'd send you someone else would send you one. And every month, I believe, they started a new pairing, I think it was month by month. So we did that, and to help with that, someone, I don't know if it was the moderator of that blog, but someone had a web page called the Dishcloth Boutique. And there were dozens of patterns for knit cloths and crochet cloths. And so I always felt like I had a couple favorite dishcloth, washcloth patterns that I made that were, already created. But I always thought that was a really good way to test swatches, knit different stitch patterns. So I like to take a stitch pattern out of a book and, just put a little garter stitch edge at the bottom, knit the stitch pattern, however many repeats, and little garter stitch at the side and at the top, and there you go. So it was testing and I like the texture patterns. So one of them on there is a basket, or is a checkerboard, yes, and one's, I think, called elongated basket weave. So those weren't really patterns that I created in my head. They were basically glorified swatches. And I can see something like that being free. In fact, I want to take those 2 patterns that are on there, because the link back to that, Wayback Machine. In fact, it says if you open those up, it says that it's no longer available. And that's so disappointing when you see that on Ravelry, that, oh, what do you mean I can't get it? I want it. I like it, So I want to rewrite those instructions, make little PDFs, and put them on somewhere, either on my blog, which I'm sorry I'm not keeping up. I want to get that up to date. We'll talk about that too. But have those somewhere more accessible to, make an easier download, and have it not say that it's not available, because it is. It's just you have to really dig for it. So those were just swatches, basically. This took a little more brain power to, how many stitches to chain. And you can see that there is a hole there. It's not that magic loop where you can cinch it so tight that you don't have a hole. Well, because why do that? You've got mesh, you don't need to close that hole up with all these other holes, right? So, yeah. So, it's got that, how many increases to do and how often, and that just to make the circle, how all the shaping and that. And then, this cute little scallop at the top. Like that's I did not look up a scallop pattern. I just decided I'll make my own and see if it works, and it did. And so, there was thought into it. And also writing up the pattern, taking photos, doing a layout and all that. It took, not weeks and weeks of work, but it took work. It took some effort. So I did decide to put a price on it. But what I'm doing right now, there is a coupon code for it if you go to Etsy and want to purchase it. There's a coupon code that will be good until midnight on the 5th of September, I believe midnight on the 5th of September Central Time, which is the end of Labor Day weekend. And the coupon code is all caps LLK SACK 24. So Live Learn Knit Sack 24, LLK Sack 24. So if you go through the Ravelry site, it will take you to Etsy, and you can check out that way. If you don't want to, and I believe now you can go and buy things on Etsy without having to create an account. But you know how some of these places are, like I look at, I forget, a knitting store, I can't remember which one now, and they will often have free patterns, and I go and I put the free pattern and have to put it in your cart, and you still have to go through all the steps of adding your name and address and everything, and then it says, well, there's no payment for this, but it's still, the form made you still fill all that out. I am not sure if that's how it is through Etsy, probably, even though it's a digital download PDF that you would be getting. So if you don't want to go through that, and you would like a copy of this pattern before September 5th, midnight, you can email my web address, or my email, which is livelearnknit@gmail.com, and you can just say, I'd like the free soap sack pattern. You know, I'd like the soap sack pattern, and I will send you the PDF. So there's a limited time offer for that. Yeah, and you know, and it's just trying something. I have designed quite a few different projects. Some of them are just one-of-a-kind things for me. Some of them I would like to write the patterns up for someday, but it does take an awful lot of work. I'm working on one now that I made a few years ago for myself, and I thought, well, I will write this pattern up, and I am literally knitting a line, writing down everything I do as I'm doing it, only because, I mean, it's you know, Elizabeth Zimmerman in her patterns had the blind follower instructions and the pithy instructions, where it was just, here's your basic, you're making this shaping, you're increasing 4 times, 8 times, whatever, add a cable up the center, boom, you're done. You know, she had that, or then she had the blind follower step-by-step instructions for people who like that. And you know, so I'm trying to start with the very detailed, and then I might also write an overview. And all that takes, you know, it takes time and double checking to make it work. So, and I like doing it. It's fun, but it's just one more thing that I'm working on. So that's the soap sack. And I know today, I'm not one. I don't use liquid hand soap or body wash or anything like that. I am still an old-fashioned bar soap person, and I do think, and Amy, it was probably, she never did an essay in her Tightwad Gazette about what's more cost-effective, liquid soap or bar soap. I think because it was just a given that bar soap was more expensive and, you know, didn't last as long. How many commercials have we seen for laundry soap now where they're saying you're paying for the water? And I think it's that way with the liquid soaps. I do. I think a bar soap, you get more bang for your buck. Can't prove it. I looked online trying to see if anyone had, you know, what do they say? And there wasn't necessarily a conclusive, because the range of costs of soap is all over the board. You can buy very cheap soaps from the dollar store. You can buy very fancy soaps from boutiques and, you know, high-end places. So you can run the gamut of, and the same with body washes and hand soap, liquid soaps. You know, you can, again, a whole range of prices and ingredients and things like that. So it's hard to come up with a conclusive, yes, this uses, you know, saves more money than a liquid soap. I just feel in my heart that it does. So just the logic, I don't know where that comes from, but that's my thinking. And oh, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry. Shoot. It just went. I'm going to take a drink of water and see if it comes back. Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to be frugal about that. And okay, so we'll just move on to what soap is all about. And I am not a scientist, but I do know the basic principle of soap is a surfactant. Soap does two things. The molecules in soap attach to the molecules of dirt and of oil and water in two different ways, and that's it. It attracts the water it repels the water, it attracts the dirt, it repels the dirt. It just makes everything move around. And the main thing it also does is it breaks the surface tension of the water and makes water more wet. So also, this is like always the nostalgia talks, when I was little. But when I was little, we had a book, probably like a Popular Mechanics size book, and it was 101 science experiments you can do at home. And I'll tell you, there were some fun experiments in that book, and we didn't do all of them, but there were a lot of fun ones. And I don't remember if it said for kids, but it was more grown-up stuff than they'd let kids do nowadays, I tell you that. I remember there was something with flames starting, was it cornstarch on fire and blowing it through a straw? Anyway, that was a fun one. But there was this basic one where you took a basin of water and you floated a piece of screen in it. And when I say screen, I don't mean today's nylon screen. I mean like screening like this, a piece of metal mesh. And so you put this little square of metal wire mesh screening on top of the water, and it sat there because of the surface tension, and you put a cork on it. And then, so it's floating around there, and the cork's on top of the screen, and it's all happy floating around. And then you take a bar of soap, or a sliver of soap, and you dip it into the water, and you see how it breaks the surface tension, and the screen sinks. So, and of course the cork floats, but the cork does drop into the water, a little bit, but it bobs. So that's the basic purpose of soap. What I also think of when I do this and when I'm thinking of soap and our projects, and of course washing our knits and using, what kind of soap do we use for that? Back in, let's see, what year did this start? 2005. The very first knitting podcast aired. And it was, of course, back then they were audio podcasts. And I'm sure some of you have listened to this series. It was Caston with Brenda Dane. And Brenda was the very first one. She's an American. She is living in Wales. She was living in Wales at the time when she started. And she's still there. And she just decided she wanted to talk about knitting. And so she did many episodes between 2005 and then she stopped in 2014 because she had done 200 episodes. And she didn't just, like today, the format that we have now of here's what I'm making and here's how far I got, because she wanted to do research. And I will tell you, she is one of my inspirations for doing this. And this is why I want to have information to give you and you know, things to make you think. And boy, that sun is very bright. Just have to look at that glow at the top of my head. So, but I do want to, you know, make you think, maybe say something that you didn't think about or haven't heard about before, or that might spark your curiosity to learn, discover, explore further, or rekindle a memory. So she did a very good podcast series. I listened to it faithfully up until the very end in 2014. And she not only just, you know, broadcast every, I don't remember, it varied. She had to find a rhythm of how often she wanted to do it. And, you know, life happens, and sometimes you do more episodes and less episodes than that. But she, early on, I believe, came up with this idea of having a series of, you know, here's maybe 6 episodes on this theme. Like she did one all summer, I believe, on the idea of camp and summer activities and that kind of thing. And I forget how many episodes that was, but my very favorite series that she did ran from in 2009, and it was series 8, and it's episodes 78 to 85. I'm going to link to all of this in the show notes, but that series was called Make Do and Mend. And last night when I was writing up my notes for today, I was thinking about it, and I remember those just hitting home with me in such a strong way, because that whole idea of frugality and making do with what we have, and you know, creative use of basic materials and that, and reusing things, repurpose, recycle, that is near and dear to me for one thing. But 2009, that was right after an economic downturn, and I remember that I was struggling a bit, you know, with getting the mortgage paid and getting house repairs done and all that kind of thing, and you know, trying to really pinch my pennies, and feeling that, just feeling that feel of, gosh, resources are precious and we have to preserve them. We have to, you know, safeguard them and make it work. So she mentioned that what spurred her to create this series was that she found some pamphlets at a boot sale from the Ministry of Defense there were World War II pamphlets that were telling, you know, British women how to make do and mend. Well, a book came out with reproductions of the leaflets that Brenda was talking about. And so this book has got, like, here, Deft Darns with Mrs. So-and-so. And so it shows, it's got do's and don'ts for darning socks. Here are all the instructions for how to do some darning. And not just on socks, but buttonholes, stockings, you know, knitted fabric, patching, you know, woolens. Here's how to save fuel. Here, soap saving tips. Look at that. Save all scraps of soap, dissolve them together in an equal amount. Okay, yeah, save them, melt them down, and mush them back together. Which is true, you can do that. And it really kind of not bothered me, but my mom used to make homemade soap, of course, you know, and so did our neighbor. And so I helped her make soap. And then I tried to make soap once myself using a more contemporary recipe with, I think I used olive oil and I know I didn't use the beef tallow, the beef fat, or, you know, animal fat. I was using, yeah, probably almond oil or vegetable oil is a recipe I had. And it's funny because I made it and it saponified but it didn't set up. It was very sticky tacky. It was like fudge. You could stick your finger in it, in the box, in the soap box. So I just thought, all of that time, effort, money, supplies, and it's no good. And we had that box sat under a kitchen work table for a long time, and you kick into it, and it's like, there's that disaster soap. So then it went down to the basement for a while, and it sat down there for a year or two or more. And I remember trying to cut it probably too early, and it was just a gooey, it was very tacky. I mean, it was sort of holding a bar shape, but not really. So, it was like Jell-O, weird. And it wasn't glycerin soap, so it wasn't supposed to look or feel like Jell-O. When I moved up here, I was bringing my stuff, and I brought that box of soap with me. And I thought, what am I going to do with this? I hate to throw it out, And at that time, I had discovered Tightwad Gazette and all of her money-saving tips. I thought, well, maybe I could melt it down and rework it. So I was going to do that. I turned it out, and I started cutting it into small chunks. And I thought, this is a lot firmer than it used to be. So I sliced it all up into cubes and let it dry, and it's still tacky. Even to this day, it's still, here comes George. It's still tacky on the outside, but once you kind of wash with it and get that outer skin, whatever you want to call it, outer layer, dissolved, it's hard. It's firm and hard, and it's a really good soap, and it lathers up great, and I'm really happy with it. So I've been using my Fail soap, but it always, I always feel like it's the, I don't want to say the cheater's way, but the not the authentic way to make soap, where you're grating soap you already have and then mushing it down, melting it down, and letting it re-solidify. You're not going through that whole saponification process of the lye combining with the fat and everything. But you do what works, right? So, and if that's a way to reuse your soap scraps, go right ahead. So anyway, this book has got a lot of all of that kind of stuff, how to patch elbows and trousers. So Brenda had this series, Make, Do, and Mend, and it was episode 83, is called Rinse and Repeat, and it's all about laundry and soap and what soap does, why we use it, why we need it, why we maybe don't need it, how it works with and without, and how to care for our clothing and our knitted goods especially. And she, by that time in her series, George is bumping the camera, sorry. By that time in her series, she was doing interviews with all kinds of people, all kinds of, many different knitters, many artists, and, oh, George. So she, for this episode of Rinse and Repeat, she interviewed Ruth Goodman. And I'm sure some of you know who Ruth Goodman is, but if you don't, she is a historian, and she's kind of famous for being on the BBC. I think it's BBC, everything is, right? Or it's the other one. I'm sorry, I don't know your channels, your networks, but she did the series Victorian Farm, where she and two other people lived for a year following the Victorian way of life and everything that they had to do to survive in those times. And so she was explaining on this podcast episode all about taking care of laundry. And it's so chock full of information. I mean, I can't even give you any snippets because you really just need to go and listen to all of it. It's just wonderful. And listen to that whole series, that if you're so inclined that make, do, and mend. The first episode, what was the first one called? The episode 78. I can't remember. But it set up the whole theme of that series and what it was all about and why she decided to do it, why it came about. So just such good information, still relevant today. And Brenda did start podcasting again in late 2020, and she's still podcasting now. And these are audio podcasts. So if you have a podcast app on your phone, you can find her. I know on the iPhone, on the Apple Podcasts, everything is there from episode 1 up to the current day. I will put the links in, not to that, but to her website, and she actually has a website for the current episodes, like the 2020 to now. But then if you read there, and I will link to it, there's a link then to the past episodes, the everything from 2005 to 2014. And so she's got show notes and photos and all that stuff. And what I really liked about her podcast was it wasn't just knitting. She would have music and play music, so you could knit to that. You know, she would read her essays, and she would do these interviews. If she had an interview to do, she would talk about what she was wearing, which I remember at the very beginning she was saying, how am I going to talk about what I'm wearing? You can't see it. But she did such a good job of describing it. You know, you got the idea. So, it's good. And she paved the way for so many people. And I remember back in the early days, she mentioned getting comments from people, well, I don't like the music you play, or I don't like, you should just stick to talking about this or that or something. And she said, you know what? That's fine. You don't have to like it. But if you want something different, go create it yourself. And so some people did. Some people then took her up on that, and they decided, well, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. And other podcasts on knitting came about. And she would always recommend when there would be a new one pop up. She would say, hey, look at this, and go hear this. And I found so many good other good podcasts to listen to through her. And yeah, she encouraged a lot of people, and me included, even all these years later, definitely. So go take a look at that and have a listen. It's a great thing to listen to while you're knitting. And I used to listen to them. I had put them on a little, MP3 player, downloaded them and put them on there, and I would just listen to them in a loop when I was working. I'd be learning about laundry and learning about sewing machines and that, and I'd be doing the budget. So, yeah, it was good. The last thing I want to mention today, the last thing is Catherine Ashley Wright from Utopia, that lovely, clever woman, has come out with a cowl pattern, and it's brand new this weekend, and it is called the Odds and Ends cowl. And this is, you can see it pretty well from that photo. So it can be a 2-color cowl or a 9-color cowl. Let me see if this photo on the iPad shows that 9-color. Yeah, that shows that one better. And it can either be a DK weight yarn or a fingering weight yarn. So a lot of choices for you. And of course, she recommends, using her yarns, her Utopia Ridge Sport or Fingering, or Utopia Helix Fine, or the Utopia Sustainable or Helix DK. This would be a great project for Miniskes, because she tells in here, she gives the amounts. You need 100 grams of a main color, and if you're doing the 2-color, you need 50 grams of a contrast color, or 20 grams of 8 different colors if you're going to do the multicolor version. So that's what mini skeins usually are packed at, right? The 20-gram mini skeins. In fact, why we're sitting down here today and not up there is because I'm using that as a staging area. I'm trying to destash a bunch of yarn and books and patterns, everything, and so I'm kind of putting things there that I know I'm ready to part with, and trying to figure out where they go next. So that's happening. It's a good time to do that. So yeah, and she tells you could also make a 4-color version, and she gives the information on the amounts that you would need for all of these iterations that you could try. And yeah, it would be great for using up leftovers or using up scraps, because these repeats are they're small, you know. And let's see if I can find, yeah, here, this shows it's a tube, and so you knit the tube and then you do a garter, or sorry, not garter, Kitchener stitch to join the beginning and end together. So the inside and the outside are alike, and you don't have any floats to deal with, you know, to snag on as you put it over your head or anything like that. And it's double thick then, and actually more than double thick because it is stranded color work. So I'm excited about that pattern, and I wanted to share it with you. And I also wanted to tell you that I believe she said on her Instagram that now through September 5th, if you go to Ravelry and put that pattern, it's $5 on Ravelry, but if you put it in your cart before September 5th, if you put it in the cart, it just changes automatically to free, and you can check out. So wonderful that she gives you a free pattern, and perfect to knit. She will be with all of her wonderful yarn at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, which is coming up the weekend after Labor Day in Jefferson, Wisconsin. And she'll also be at Rhinebeck, I believe, because she always goes to Rhinebeck. So, and I'm pretty sure I saw her mentioning, you know, getting ready for Rhinebeck. So yeah, Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival is coming up in another 2 weeks. It'll be, you know, and I am still on the fence of whether or not I'm going to go. It's, oh, how far is it for me? It's at least a 3-hour drive, if not more. So if I'm not, oh, it's terrible. It's terrible to say that I don't know if I can do that kind of trip all in one day. Go there, drive 3 or more hours, walk around a festival all day and be overwhelmed by all the sights and sounds and commotions and everything, and then drive back the same day. That's a lot. I think with the summer I've had, I can't do that. So it would have to be an overnight at one point, and I maybe have left it too long to make a reservation anywhere. So I found one class in here that I would have liked to take called Mechanics of Your Wheel. You know, I've mentioned I'm having a little issues with my wheel, and it's probably more a me issue than the wheel, but I think the wheel I put together from a kit, so it could be the wheel, you know, it could be some of the mechanics too, the physical. But that's an all-day class on Saturday, so that would actually mean 2 overnights. Go on Friday, stay overnight, get up, do the class on Saturday, stay another night, and come home. And I don't think that's going to happen this year. Sad to say. But it's so enticing to read through catalogs like this and see all of the classes that are being offered and all of the vendors that will be there, and just all the creativity. I'm sure, okay, everybody that goes to Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, just really send those vibes out, because maybe they will cross the Wisconsin and you know, come to me. Wouldn't that be nice? Come to all of us. That would be great, right? We'll get the Rhinebeck vibes too, because yeah, that's an even bigger festival. Wisconsin is up there. It's pretty big. It's pretty well known. So that's it for me today. Thanks for sitting here with me. I hope you had an enjoyable almost hour. Whichever way you use soap, maybe you'll try this. Again, great gifts. And if you want the pattern and you don't want to go through Etsy and do the, coupon and all that, just let me know and I will send it to you. And before September 5th. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm gonna go water my plants outside now. It's the end of I smelt it yesterday. That dry, parched smell that things are starting to break down, and when it's hot you kind of smell that. Not the cool, crisp fall smell, but that end of summer hot smell. We had that yesterday. So yeah, I'm gonna go water the plants, and then I think I'm just gonna knit for a good part of the day. Not all of it, but Sundays are gonna be relaxing, right? So go ahead, relax, enjoy, and I'll see you again. I'm not sure what we'll talk about next time, but I hope it'll be entertaining. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Be well.